You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com, and Henry the FLOWMASTER Schwartz from CBOE. The Option Block is brought to you by CBOE. When it comes to trading volatility, trust CBOE, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. CBOE's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back. It is Thursday. It is a little bit past noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. It is time once again for episode 2 of your bi-weekly options extravaganza, known around the globe as the Option Block. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the ever scintillating, ever engaging, at least we tend to think so, and heck, we're not biased at all, Options Insider Radio Network. If you do like what you hear, throw some stars our way wherever you get it. Could be this show's feed, could be the main network feed, could be our app, could be over there on the old tubes or whatever other platform under the sun you get it at. If you have the opportunity, throw stars or a like or whatever it is. It does help new people continue to discover the content. And as we all see, there are new people discovering options literally every day. They need a place to turn. So throw some of those ratings our way. Helps those new folks discover the content. Of course, if you want to discover more content in your life, and man, who can hold it against you? TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is clearly the place to go. The second you hit that join button, you have 200 plus hours of pro content waiting for you. Some of the best minds in the world of options and derivatives at your fingertips. Of course, you get pro Q&As every week, options oddities, live access to this and everything else we do. You get your name in the hat for the awesome pro trading crate. Just gave one away last week. For the previous month. So a lot to enjoy there. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go as we go around the horn and see who's joining us on the old program today. First, joining us from the dark, the stormy, the rain-whipped, perhaps choked in the smoke of Canada, I don't know, shores of Maine, we are joined once again by the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. Mr. G, welcome back to the show. And can you see the shores of Maine from where you are? How's the smoke condition by you? You are Canada adjacent, after all.
I am Canada adjacent, but thankfully, I guess the low pressure in Maine right now is keeping the smoke demon away. So sadly, friends in New York are like, holy gosh, this is terrible. So
yeah, some of those photos
I can only liken it to being in San Francisco 30 years ago in 1990 when the Oakland Hills burned down. And we came back to the city after going to the beach, and it was like an apocalypse with ash everywhere.
Some of those
sadly left our windows open and that apartment filled with ash. So anyway, but
pro tip:
I feel for all those people.
Don't leave your windows open during fire season. That's a good pro tip for the folks out there. If only we had someone who we could check in with in a little bit to hear about what's going on in the now apocalyptic New York City. But before we get there, let's go out to a place that's never apocalyptic. It's idyllic, day in, day out. Of course, the little hamlet known as St. Charles, where we are joined once again by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Manager. Uncle Mike, welcome back to your shores of the Fox River there. No Canadian smoke in your hinterland, sir.
No, thankfully, but I am saddened today on the news of the passing of the Iron Sheik. So I'm a little bit sad about that. He was a great villain for the WWF back in the day. But aside from that, all is well.
Yes, that was sad news of the Iron Sheik, one of the greatest heels ever to lace up the boots. When I think back to those glory days of 80s wrestling, when I think of heels, Iron Sheik is probably the one who leaps to mind first. He was just always living that heel life. I don't think he ever worked face as far as I know. He was always a heel. That's why when he got caught in that car with Hacksaw and it was the face and the heel together, it almost brought the business to its knees. It was so shocking to people out there, this evil heel. Of course, he has reinvented himself, or he had, I should say, as quite the voice on Twitter in the last decade or so. A lot of people following him just for that. Probably just know him from his Twitter account. So, yeah, the Iron Sheik, that was a big hit to the 80s wrestling community out there this week. And joining us from the aforementioned apocalyptic scene known as New York, he is the FLOWMASTER himself, Mr. Henry Schwartz from CBOE. Mr. FLOWMASTER, how you doing? Are you wearing a gas mask as you speak to us, sir?
I'm okay. Good to talk to you guys. It's it's really weird. Yesterday, our office is right across from the Staten Island Ferry, and you can see, well, on a normal day, you can see the Statue of Liberty and even Staten Island. And yesterday, it was just dark and yellow and ridiculous and weird. It's a little bit better today, but I've been here for like 30 years. I've never seen anything quite like this. So it's another interesting thing to say you lived through in New York City.
Yes, the last few years have been just giving us many gifts that none of us ever thought we would see. And all those shots, you're right, I saw a lot of those shots of the Statue of Liberty just ensconced in that orange, yellowish haze was just, they were very, I think, apocalyptic, to put it mildly. Let's see if the markets are apocalyptic, listeners, because it's time for the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading. And spoiler alert, right here at the top, the markets are not apocalyptic. I may have teased you with that lead-in. Unless you're talking vol. Vol is getting taken to the woodshed once again. So if you're long a ton of vol, maybe you're thinking this is kind of apocalyptic. But from a broad index and markets perspective, things are looking pretty hunky-dory again. As we're kicking off the show, S&P up exactly 0.5%. The Dow closing in on that, nearly 0.5%. And the NASDAQ up about 0.9%. So all is right with the world. We are green again, listeners out there. That means if our vol friends had any excuse to just collapse, they have it in spades today. Yes, we have a 13 handle in VIX to kick off the show. Listen, I mean, it was crazy when we kissed a 15 handle not too long ago, like a week ago. And then we were flirting with the 14 handle. That seemed uncomfortably close to the crazy year of 2017 where vol went to die. And now here we are, a handle below that, listeners. 1365 when we kicked off the show, down a point I mean, if you listened to the show back in 2017, you know we were hanging out in that 12 handle for quite some time, and then we went lower, and that was where everything just went to die. When the VIX gets to single digits, no bueno for the world of options. We're not quite there yet, listeners, but 1365. Did you have a 13 handle in your vol prediction for this week? Spoiler alert, I did not. So, yeah, they're just coming for this vol. Again, the vol math is pretty straightforward. I've already said it a million times. If the indexes ain't moving, at the end of the day, you can't price in a heck of a lot of juice. We're not exactly sitting still. 20 handles is not exactly sitting still, but still, just fascinating stuff out there. VVIX, the vol of vol, literally unched from the Monday show, 86 coming into the start of the show. VXX continues to just plunge. 28 even when we kicked off the show, down 2 3/4. Then we have a UVXY out there, 2 1/4, down 1/4. You might say, big deal. Who the hell cares? They don't give a crap about this product anymore. And you would be right, except for the fact that the entirety of Twitter alerted us yesterday to the news. All the people who listen to Vol Views were very excited to point out to us that, yes, they finally have realized that this product is going to die, because they announced ProShares a 10-for-1 reverse split for UVXY coming on June 23rd. You can maybe argue maybe we need a 20 at this point, because getting reverse split to south of 25, we've saw what happened with UVIX. It ain't going to help you for too long. But hey, it's better than nothing. We'll take what we can get. SVIX, 24.90. Another new all-time high, up 2 points from last show. So wherever he is, in fact, I'll be talking to him in a little bit, the once and future Dr. VIX on Twifo. I'm sure he's got a big smile on his face, because half of his holdings, I think, are in SVIX these days. UVIX, 580, down 1.2 points. So UVIX going the way of the dodo pretty hard as well. And Vol Q, a.k.a. the at-the-money vol, the NASDAQ, 17 1/4, down about 2/3 of a point. All right, let's go back around the horn, the opposite of the way we started. Let's go out to the apocalyptic dust hot seat first, or smoke. Mr. Flowmaster, sir, if you can take a break from your respirator for a few minutes over there. What's catching your eye out there in the markets this week, sir?
Well, you are absolutely right that the level of volatility, or the absence of volatility, is, I think, it's surprised a lot of people. It's been an interesting year, and I guess you could, I don't know. We talked about it last time around. The sentiment is that we survived a rate hike cycle, and I don't know, people aren't really concerned about inflation at the moment, and the banking crisis blew over, maybe the smoke will soon enough. And there's just there's kind of a lot of complacency, I would actually call it. So I don't know. We're coming into summer months. Maybe it's just going to be kind of a quiet summer, but it was a heck of a bounce. I mean, we're basically back up near all-time highs, or not far off of them, and plenty of stocks hit them, including Apple. So it's an interesting period.
I noticed you were making some notes here as we're talking, sir, about overall options volume versus stock volume, sir. What is catching your eye on that front, sir?
Sure. Yeah, this actually was pretty interesting, because I was talking to one of our equity markets managers, and it was funny because I was like, hey, volume's pretty good. And he's like, no, it's not. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, let me run the data. And it's pretty interesting when you zoom into it. We're obviously Q1 for market-wide volume was a record, right? We're pushing 45 million contracts a day. It got a little bit slow, but it's really pretty much bounced back. And I just grabbed the S&P 500 component stocks and their average option volume, which is running around 12 million contracts a day now, which is a pretty solid uptick from last year. And then I grabbed the underlying volume for those same 500 stocks, and the underlying volume is lower. They're actually down a decent chunk year over year. So which is why I understood why the guy was not in such a good mood. So this is kind of a side effect of, and this is not index. We're keeping the 0-day out of this, right? This is just the S&P 500 names, which currently don't have any 0-day flow in there, which may change in the future. But so basically equity volume down a little bit, but option volume up. It kind of shows you that as you mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of new participants. There's just a lot of new users or existing users trading, continuing to trade very actively. So it seems to be a pretty solid time for the equity for the options market, while the equities market is really not in such a good place. I mean, the lower volatility probably hurts the equities a little bit more as well, because when things really aren't swinging around, then people aren't kind of actively getting in and getting out of stock.
That data says to me, Henry, that just says all the cool kids are coming to the options party. They want to come to the cool party. They don't want to play around in that boring stock party, stand around with your crappy solo cups. They want to come to the cool party that is the options party. And they're leaving that stock stuff choking in the smoke of New York over there with FLOWMASTer. Mr. Rock Lobster, same question for you, sir. What is catching your eye out there in another week where the markets are green and vol is being taken out to die, sir?
Today's actually the hardest day I've had trying to buy some VIX puts. They're kind of running away.
You want some June 15s? I'll sell you some. My offers are a little bit above the market. I'm a little bit outlandish with them, but if you want to lift my offer, I'll sell you some.
You know what? I sadly have closed all my June and I rolled into July. So I guess I can kick myself in the teeth for it.
You want that high gamma stuff? I got it for you. Just shoot me an IM. I'll take care of you.
I think you should thank me for these fills, waking you up to these puts. But no, and what's going on? You got AI. You have a story. The market's got a story again. We haven't had a positive market story. I mean, Henry TOSAW, in 3 years? The last positive thing was, the government was going to juice everything, which they did. And clearly all of those gains went back to zero from basically middle of 2020 when they started juicing the market, with all their QE nonsense. We gave it all back. And now we have a new story, even though, I'm not sure how many companies have made money from AI yet per se. But according to social media, everybody's going to make a ton of money somehow. But I believe that, probably will happen. But I think the rest of the market is catching up now. So, ultimately, Mark, trading, I always thought vol was high when we could have a rip, right? And, when that big QE rip goes away, the Fed's basically saying they're not going to raise this summer, I believe, if you could tell what all the governors keep, jawboning about. So if there's no 3-4% rip in the market, that's how vol goes down, I think. I always thought, VIX got high when there's really two-way action. If we're just sort of, skew is already higher for the downside in SPX. So what was really, changing things was the need for the at the money to be so expensive because of what was going on. So anyway, I see 1356. Mark was calling a 12 VIX a couple of weeks ago, and everybody thought he was nuts. And heck, we could see the 12 handle by the end of the day.
See it today. I know. How terrifying is that? When we hit 12, then I am starting to get some of that PTSD from 2017. Then it's like, oh no, here we go. Here comes 9 VIX, and options markets go to die. That year was such a horrible year in so many ways. Obviously, we've had worse since then from a broad societal perspective, but from a pure options perspective, 2017, no bueno out there. But who's always happy, always optimistic? He's not choking on apocalyptic smoke right now. He is the uncleest of Mikes. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what's catching your eye out there in yet another green Uncle Mike type of day?
Well, I think with what we need to look at in the markets right now is what is going to lead it going forward. We talked about the sexy 7, if you will, on Monday's show. And that's a lot of what's leading the markets.
We upgraded it to the super sexy 7 in the interim. So there you go. They've been upgraded.
Wow. Very good. Interesting. Then if we put some ratio spreads on them, we can double lever the sexy 7, super sexy 7. That could be an interesting strategy.
Who wouldn't buy that ETF? Levered super sexy 7 ETF? I'm all in. Take all my money now.
There you go. But I think there's the thing that we need to ask ourselves as market participants would be, is the sexy seven, super sexy seven, going to continue to lead the market, or are we going to have a little bit more balance in the market to make it a little bit more broad based? With the uncertainty of interest rates after the summer, so to speak, I think that's something that needs to be factored into your decision, or anyone's decision on where the market's going to go. Combine that with a little bit of a little bit of a sell-off in bonds over the course of the last few weeks. And I think there's just a lot of uncertainty right now. Even though the VIX is lower, I feel more uncertain now than when the VIX was at 20, quite frankly. We knocked on the door of the 4,300 level of the SPX. We did not go through it, or we're at least underneath it right now anyway. And so it kind of acted as a point of resistance in the marketplace, it did act as a point of resistance in the marketplace, was the 4,300 level. And then with the global uncertainty that seems to be remaining constant right now, we do have a war in Ukraine that we don't really talk about anymore. So we do have that to factor. And I would just say that right now we're at a point of a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace, even though the VIX seems to be less uncertain.
The VIX does indeed seem to be less uncertain. Speaking of the certainty of the VIX, is it certain that it's putting up some serious numbers today? I guess we'll find out, listeners. And the answer to that one is yes. I guess apocalyptic smoke is a good thing for VIX options volume, listeners. Forget about this stock stuff. Who needs this stock stuff? Come to the Cool Kids options party, listeners. It's really fun. 900,000 contracts exactly on the tape right now in VIX land. That's a heck of a lot of paper for this time of day. The ADV 801s are already north of the ADV, listeners. That's telling me something out there in VIX land. So maybe that's everybody chasing those puts that the Rock Lobster's chasing. Hey, I got some. I might get filled by the end of the show at this point. This is crazy. SPY, 4.9 million. The ADV, 8.5 million out there. So SPY, once again, that's kind of its normal level for this time of the show, about 4.9 million. Again, day that ends in Y. SPY is always putting up numbers. The S, 1.5 million. Again, a year ago, we would have lost our minds at that number. Over 1 million by this portion of the show. And the S, what a crazy day. Now 1.5 million. We kind of shrug our shoulders. If it's not like 1.75 million by this time of the day, it's a light day in the S. So again, shows you how the 0-day explosion has changed that paradigm markedly. I think we have a question about 0-day. We'll get more to 0-day a little bit later in the show. And the ADV out there in the S right now, right around 2.75 million. Small caps looking surprisingly light today, a little bit shy of 600K. Again, on a normal day, that would be rock'em sock'em robots, but the ADV is 1.1 million. And lately we've been threatening that by this portion of the show already. So the fact that we're not already at 1 million out there is underwhelming now. IWM right now off about 0.4%. So once again, small caps not feeling the joy that is carrying the rest of the market. And the Qs, 2.16 million, the ADV, 3.07 million. So the Qs back north of 3 million in their ADV as well. So volume, if it's leaving the equity markets, it's coming into all these here because all these ADVs are back up. In terms of single names, listeners, what's lighting it up out there today? Well, it's actually a pretty busy day. Cost you nearly 300K to break into the top 10 today, 294 to be precise. That gets you all the way to GameStop. Remember them? The former darling of the meme stock Palooza kicked off all that madness, and they brought on the guy from Chewy and all that fun, and it kind of just kicked off the mad, insane year that was 2021. Feeling a little bit of the reverse love today, selling off about $4.50 or 17.4%, trading $21.50 right now. They're shaking up that executive suite after some of these much heralded initiatives maybe not coming to pass out there. So kicking some folks to the curb, including the CEO out there. So market not liking what they're seeing out there, taking them to the woodshed. And the stock, 300K. I haven't talked about GameStop in a little bit here on the show, but here they are back in the focus. Number 9, listeners. You could wonder why this thing is rallying so hard given the fact that Apple has firmly set their sights on them with their new headset this week. Again, I said on the Monday show, you could maybe argue that Apple diving into VR/AR is going to be the rising tide that lifts all boats, and that could certainly happen. But when Apple's coming at you, it's usually not a good thing for you. But Meta continues to shrug it off. They announced their latest edition to their Quest headset. Not quite a competitor to what Apple's showing out there, that $3,500 monstrosity of a headset, but intriguing stuff nonetheless. Meta to the upside again today, 266.40, up about 2 3/4 right now. Good for 307,000 contracts on the tape out there, listeners. Number 8, reminiscent of the heady days of March when Contagion was all the rage, and this name, SoFi, was lighting it up to the downside. Lighting it up to the upside now. It has pretty much doubled from those days, listeners. It was trading 4 1/4 at the lows back in March. 8.14 today, up 40 cents. So it has, again, almost exactly doubled since those days. So intriguing stuff. 314,000 contracts on the tape for number 8. SoFi. Number 7, getting out to the realm of AI. It is Palantir, back up over $15. They had rallied higher. They got up to 17 to change. But then they gave some of that back. They were back into a 14 handle yesterday, and indeed this morning. In fact, they hit 14.39 this morning. So intriguing. So now rallying back north of the 15 handle, up about 45 cents today. So Palantir, feeling a lot of that AI love, kind of taking a break over the last few sessions now, coming back up. Good for 445,000 contracts. Number 6, Carvana. Man, this one. Mr. Rockloff says, it does not seem like it was that long ago. You and I were talking about this on Options Oddities, and it was well in the single digits. It was, around $4, I believe. And we were just talking about how this name was just going to die. Couldn't make sense of it. There was all these regulatory issues with it. It was kept getting banned in Illinois, then unbanned, and it was happening all over the country. It was a very weird name. And it seemed like all the upside paper we saw in it was just going to die. Well, not today, listeners. Carvana up $6.80, or nearly 44%, trading, get this, $22.32. It is up 11 handles, or pretty much doubling over the span of the past month, listeners. And again, you go back to when Rocklops and I were probably last talking about on Oddities, probably the end of last year, back in December, it was trading around $3.50, $4. $22 now, listeners. 458,000. They had earnings. People liking what they heard, obviously. And lighting up the tape. Carvana, my goodness, back amongst the living. Number 5, really the first half of the chip zone these days, it's AMD, 493,000 contracts. AMD up 330, because why not? Day that ends in Y. 121.13 for AMD. Number 4, yes, I said number 4. That's interesting. It's the fruit company. It's Apple. Only 551,000 contracts, so fairly light on the volume front today. Up about $1.60, or trading right around 179.5. Has retreated a little bit, about a little over $5 from its recent high of nearly 185 out there. So no longer at all-time highs, but pretty freaking close, but not doing a lot of paper today. Number 3, the Amazonians managing to outpace Apple today. Amazon, 628,000 contracts, up $3 for them today, or about 2.5%, trading 124.25 right now for the Amazonians. Number 1, the name that brought you to the dance today. It's NVIDIA. It's all anybody can talk about these days. 751,000 contracts for NVIDIA, 384.78. Oh, it's only up 10 handles exactly, or about 2.6%. So, yeah, quiet day for NVIDIA. Only 10 handles. It's not much. 751,000 contracts. And then number 1 out there, managing to hold on to its crown in spite of all this other madness, all these other contenders vying for its throne, listeners. It's Tesla. 2.07 million contracts today. That's because it's popping pretty hard. Up 7.25, a little over 3, about 3.2%. Trading a little bit shy at 232 right now. Getting a little bit of a lift. Looks like some Cybertruck related news out there lifting Tesla. But again, a day that ends in Y. Tesla's going to move. Tesla's going to put up numbers. And today, over 2 million. In terms of the rest of the numbers, listeners, earnings season kind of coming to a close. But we do still have some names popping off. You can check it out if you are intrigued, listener. This week, we had names like Sienna. We had Ollie's. Everyone loves Ollie's. You want to see what's going on in Cracker Barrel, Vol? We got you covered out there. DocuSign, Neo coming up on Friday. So still some interesting names. Campbell Soup, all that good, juicy soup, Vol, out there. We got you all covered there with our earnings move results. Earnings season reports right now. Hot off the presses, we have the GameStop earnings move results. Spoiler alert, a little bit about performance there, though not as much as you might think, which is kind of interesting. Going into their announcement, they were 26.11. When we ran this report, they were nearly $5 lower, 21.25. They were pricing in 16.1%, though, listeners. and they had delivered, as of the time of this report, 18.6. So outperforming, but not as much. And they're back to down about 17% now. So, yeah, they actually were pricing in a heck of a lot of juice, which is intriguing out there. So you might have thought GameStop blowing the doors off out there, but actually only beating its straddle by about 16%. So intriguing. I expected a little more out of that. We have DocuSign coming up after the bell today. They were at 57.25 when we ran the numbers. They were pricing in, let's see, $7.36. In the past, they moved $8.60, so a little bit lighter vol out there. And DocuSign, of course, one of these pandemic names, got a lot of hype, got a lot of action. Maybe these days, not as much. So intriguing out there. Also got Oracle coming up later on. That's on the 12th. So all these reports are available for you. TheOptionsInsider.com. Our season coming back down, listeners. It was hanging out at exactly 100%. The season report now 95%. So pretty much almost exactly in line with our long-term average of 96%. Check out all that for yourselves. TheOptionsInsider.com is the place to go, because it's time for us to go right on into Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by TheOptionsInsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Odd Block, the portion of the show where we get weird, we get wild, maybe a little whimsical. I love the Thursday edition of the show. It's because the FLOWMASTER gets to join us in the old Odd Block, and we see what the eye of the FLOWMASTER is fixing on today as well. And Mr. FLOWMASTER, it seems like you've uncovered a little-known name. I'm not sure most of our listeners are familiar with. I think it's pronounced VIX. Is that it?
It is called the VIX.
Oh, okay. That's a new one to me. Tell me about this name.
I'm assuming you were involved in this trade, Mark, because I know that at this level you probably want to lean long.
It's a little too. I do, but it's a little too small for me. You know, I don't get out of bed for at least a couple 100,000 contracts.
Gotcha. So yeah, the biggest odd block today is the biggest trade in the entire market, which is 102,000 of the VIX July 23 calls that we saw bought from like 84 cents up to 87 cents. The average was 86.7 cents. And this was a nice, clear-cut, directional trade in VIX. It's not part of a spread. We've seen some of these big, giant, 100,000 by 300,000 ratio spreads trade over the last month or so. This one is just a single. And it is opening, even though there's 144,000 contracts that exist. I was able to confirm it's an opening trade. Customer bought, market maker sold about 23,000 contracts, and the executing firm positioned 80,000 contracts. So this is kind of like your classic facilitated customer trade, and was probably negotiated for a bit. But it's $9 million worth of premium spent on calls that will only make money if VIX gets up to about 24. In the next month and a half. So this is an interesting one. It obviously could be a bet on volatility spiking. It also could just be a hedge. It just could be somebody that's pretty happy with the rally that we've had, has a very large portfolio, and prefers to hedge it with VIX calls instead of SPX puts, which is, they're very, very similar in the characteristics if the market starts to get ugly. I did do the math, and if you P&L this to VIX, where we hit the highs in 2020 over 82, then this is like a $600 million trade. 82. I couldn't resist. So you got to think about the headlines. So it's an interesting one. I mean, it's just a $600 million trade. And then I got another one.
Before you get there, yeah. I do love your optimism. The 80 handle stress test on this trade is fantastic. Mr. Rock Lobster, I heard you laughing there. What are your thoughts on someone gobbling up all the July upside here? And hey, if VIX gets to 80, it's looking pretty good.
You know what? I tell all my students, if you want to buy those calls, that's fine. But you could also buy a 17 put for like $1.20. And in a week, that 17 put will probably pay for all those calls, even 100,000 contracts. So like, I love that people want this, but I think they forget that they could also be easily financed. That's the only thing I will say about this. Like, I love the fact that people go after the calls and totally ignore the puts and VIX, but I'll leave it there.
Hey, if they want some puts, I got some for them. Just hit me up, listeners, on IM.
And by the way, I do approve of Henry's enthusiasm on the 83.
That was great.
Educating everybody.
Why would you back test any other level than the highest level that VIX is hitting?
Go big or go home.
I love it. No 30s or 40s for the FLOWMASTER. He's right to the top of the mountain. I love that. That's probably how this guy sold his trade to his risk manager. Look, the VIX hits 83. I'm looking good in this trade. How could I not do this?
It did happen twice, right? 83 was the all-time high. Well, 82.79 was the all-time closing high in March of 2020. And then if you go back to 08, it was around 82, just above 82, I think. So there's 2 data points that say 82 is the top.
There you go. 2 data points. That's all this guy needs to put this. I'm surprised he didn't do more size. Why wouldn't you do 500,000? You got 2 data points. That's fascinating stuff. Speaking of 2 data points, it looks like you got another data point in a name we've talked about before on the show, but it has been a while, listeners. This is Frontline PLC, the world's 4th largest oil tanker shipping company. Say that 5 times fast, listeners. Trading right now, $14.33, ticker symbol FRO, up about $0.33 today. On the year, obviously a little bit of a different story. A year ago, it was trading $10 even. So they've had a nice little run. A lot of that coming in the last, since the start of the year. It started the year at 1068, so it didn't really net from June 8th of last year, our favorite day. Listen, actually, this is our favorite day. I forgot to mention that. June 8th, the day when markets seem to go wild and all the names we talk about have their apex or their nadir on this day. I'm not sure why it is. Well, happy June 8th to all of you out there. And then on January 4th, the stock hadn't really budged. It was 1068. And then since then, it kind of shot up. It went from 1068 on January 4th. By February 28th, it was trading 19 and a quarter. They had a huge run and nearly doubling, and then kind of coming back down to life where it is right now. It was trading a 13 handle just this morning, now rallying up to 1433. All right, Mr. Rock Lobster, I apologize. Mr. FLOWMASTER, I've set the table for you, sir. What did your eye of the FLOWMASTER find today in FRO, sir?
So this was a funny one. It hit one of my triggers for just kind of funky speculative flow. And all it really was, right at noon, we saw a buyer of 2,000 of the July 15 calls when the stock was 1411. And I happened to see it hit, and it's kind of a thin name. Average daily call volumes, 1,300 contracts. Average daily share volumes, only 3 million shares. And stock started to tick up, and I actually jumped in and bought a little bit of stock myself because it just kind of felt like if anything more came down the pipe, that people would kind of really be paying attention. And I think I've mentioned this before, but and I'm not giving any trading advice. Sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. But when the market is like where we are now, where everybody's kind of comfortable, people start looking for some of these kind of speculative setups. And so I kind of have the feeling like we're kind of primed for that, just because people are kind of in a happy place. So I grabbed some stock. Stock ran up about 30 cents in the next 40 minutes or so. There were no further call buying in this thing. So I got out of the stock actually, and it's still a little bit higher than where they bought it, which is 1411. But it's kind of worth keeping an eye on. I think that I'm in the range on this thing. It's kind of in the middle. It's been as high as $19 in March. So it was kind of a fun one for a short scalp. I'm not going to keep anything on overnight.
FLOWMASTER, scalping away. Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, what are your thoughts on FRO? And how do these FRO calls look if VIX gets to 83?
Well, I think if VIX gets to 83, those calls probably don't look very good.
Yeah, there's probably something else
my guess.
amiss in the world, I would think.
There would be something amiss. However, you are starting to see, like I agree with Henry, there's definitely been a little bit more animal spirits in the market, buying options. So, all you need is a story. Is if you can spin a story, calls love a bull market. They love a story. So, I don't think those are crazy. I know these shipping companies can kind of catch fire. So, I don't think this is an unreasonable purchase at all. So, I think they could easily get there if people start to get a little happy. I think that's the story. So I don't think this is an unreasonable purchase at all.
So the opposite of when VIX is at 83. So I don't think people are happy when VIX was at 83. Let's look. We got one more here coming in from the FLOWMASTer. This is the name we talked about before, but it's been a while. The name is iconic. Rock Lobster and I have joked about it on Options Oddities before. This is Grab Holdings. You got to grab yourself some Grab Holdings, listeners. Ticker symbol, appropriately enough, Grab, trading $3.37 today, up about 13 cents or a little over 4%. So nice little pop for them today. On the year, this thing's kind of been vacillating back and forth between pretty much $2 and $4. So it's been intriguingly range bound. It was exactly a year ago on June 8th. It was exactly $3. And then it shot up to looks like close to $4, $3.85 in August, and then back down to $2.31 in October, and then back up again. Beginning the year, January 17th, $4.03. That was the high for the year. Then they came for it again by March 24th, trading $2.68. Then they tried to rally it. It got up to $3.34 in May. Then they crushed it again back down to $2.76 like a week later. And then since then, they've only pretty much rallied it from the middle of May all the way up to where it is right now, right around $3.40 again. And Mr. FLOWMASTer, what did you notice out there in everyone's favorite Singaporean name, Grab?
Yeah, this was a funky one. I had to look it up, and I still don't understand what a super app company is, but that's what they say they have. This is an interesting. I was able to. So the call to put ratio in there today is 130. So it is a very heavy day for calls. We got about 13,000 of them trading against 100 puts, and average daily call volume is only around 6,000 contracts. But what the trade actually that we saw is looks like it's a call seller closing something out. So 10,000 of the July 3/2 calls were dumped for 15 cents. That seems to match a purchase from February where they bought them for 63 cents, and the stock was kind of around the same level, like you said. So that's a loser, but they do seem to be getting into the 3-strike calls. So they're kind of rolling up to have some delta if the stock does get a lift. And I don't know, maybe I'm a little skeptical, but some of these ADRs we do see some funky stuff in terms of they're no analysts cover them right, and it's not something like this. So I think there may be some information out there that we don't see that is not widely distributed, and to see somebody kind of reloading even after losing some money is a bullish sign to me. I don't think I'm going to put anything on in here, but I'll keep an eye on it. I mean, it's a $3 stock, and like I said, when there's kind of the animal spirits in the market, people do kind of gravitate towards these low dollar price stocks. Some of these low priced options, 30-cent call that can go up to 40 or 50 cents, kind of in the blink of an eye. If conditions are right, it attracts people. So that was why it caught my eye.
Intriguing. So he's not giving up the ghost, obviously doing a little bit less size. So he kind of got burned, but he's still keeping the party alive. Mr. Rock Lobster, what are your thoughts, sir? He's done, but not quite out in Grab, sir, your favorite Singaporean super app.
Well, I've been waiting for this Singaporean super app to become super again. And like trying to do a Carvana.
Trying to pull a Carvana.
Yeah. It's funny. And one of my students this morning, well, he's probably not even a student anymore. He's pretty much just a professional trader at this point. But we were looking at, I'm like, because it's been on the list, right, ever since. It's still pretty there's still some pretty short interest squeeziness in Carvana. So that we could get another, we could see another $10 gap or something like that in there. I'm just, that's not a, that is a maybe prediction, but it wouldn't bother me if it happened, put it that way.
That would explain why every single trade out there today is just nothing but enormous opening and all the calls you could possibly find out there.
It is. If somebody is still short that, I don't know. It would be interesting to see lightning strike twice. The 30 calls are only like $1.10 in June.
It was just $4.
And normally I would say that's insane, but since they can go to 500 vol or 1,000 vol,
you could have bought all the stock you wanted for $4 like a few months ago.
Yes, I believe so. Was there call buyers in car? I think there were.
Yeah, we talked about
right?
a bunch of people throwing money away out there for a while. We used to mock it.
Yes, and clearly we were wrong. But grab, so the seller of closing, I can't quite tell this one. Are they trying to buy I don't know, quite understand Henry's notes. Are they buying this, or they're buying it but lost money, kind of, right? So they're reloading.
Yeah, they're reloading at a higher dose.
Yeah. I mean, you would think I haven't seen the crazy short interest though in grab as like something like Carvana, but hope springs eternal. Hope springs eternal.
The last time we talked about Carvana was actually on this show when he spotted some of the weeklies expiring on March 31st. Someone loaded up, paid 17 cents for the 9s back then, quite a few times, and that worked out because the stock closed at $9.50 or so. So that was a smaller win, but still a win. That was the last time we talked about Carvana. That was just a few months ago. Again, the stock was $9, a paltry $9 then. We're already looking better. As we keep on rolling, it's always looking good, listeners. It's your feedback. Let's get to it. A little bit of the old mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the mail block.
All right, let's get to it, listeners. You folks know how to hit us up at Options on most of the major social media platforms. Questions at theoptionsinsider.com works. If you're listening live, of course, the live chat also gets you in there. And if you're following us on social media, you've seen our questions of the week. This week, we have another hotly contentious one. Very simple. Going back, we like to check in with you folks on certain key things. Beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year. And it's getting around that middle of the year time. So we thought we'd ask you. We've seen a lot of green on the screen this year, but we've also seen aggressive bursts of selling that can turn things red quickly. Quite simply, will the S close positive on the year? Heck yes, or heck no. Let's go out to Permabull territory first. I have a feeling I know where he's voting. But Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, which way are you coming down? And more importantly, which way do you think our audience is coming down?
Permabull all the way. Heck yes, heck yes. Audience and me.
Now, the death of Iron Sheik hasn't soured you on the market at all. Maybe that's the indicator that the worm is turning, sir.
That must be it.
If anything,
Iron Sheik index.
If anything could burst Uncle Mike's perma-bullishness, it is the death of yet another of his beloved 80s wrestlers out there. Mr. Rocklops, I know you don't care about 80s wrestling, so that indicator is meaningless to you. Black-hearted one that you are, sir. But instead, sir, which way are you voting? Which way do you think our audience is voting?
Well, I will say though that I empathize with Mr. TOSAW when his hero, the Iron Sheik, passed. I feel bad for him. That seems to be one of the few guys I remember. Didn't he have like a Sheik hat on?
Yeah, see, he resonated. Even you heard of him. That shows you how far he resonated.
He kind of did the Lawrence of Arabia thing,
yes.
Except he was large and naked with the thing on his head. Okay. Yes.
Yes. Lawrence of Arabia.
All right. Yeah, I think the audience is going to be saying, yeah, we're gonna be up from here this year, and I would say the same.
Wow, all these freaking permabulls, Mr. Flowmaster, you're caught in an apocalyptic miasma as we speak, sir. You must be bearish on the year, sir. So, what is your outlook, and what do you think our audience is voting for?
From here, not year to not.
Oh, on the year. So I'm saying full year to date, beginning of the year to end of calendar year 2023. Will the indexes close positive or negative?
We'll be up.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. You think our audience is going that way too?
Yeah, I think that we have most of the bulls out.
All right. Well, then you are correct, because right now, heck yes is taking it 57.9%, and heck no 42.1%. Was a little closer earlier on. You got about a day left, listeners. If you're listening on the podcast, you can still get out there. And I mentioned earlier in the show, Liz is going to be talking about weeklies and 0-day again, I should say. And we have a question here from maybe Pena. Either way, they're asking, how much of a factor are these 0-day contracts in the recent volume highs set in March and again in May? Thanks. Well, luckily for you, Pena, or perhaps Pena, we have the FLOWMASTER here, a.k.a. the keeper of all the 0-day data. Mr. FLOWMASTER, sir, what do you have to say for our listener here who wants to know how big of a driving force these days are these 0 days, sir?
I think that, the 0-day, the data shows that 0-day options make up about 18% on average of the entire market. Now, 0-day options, which technically are not 0-day options, right? They're listed out several weeks or a month, and they just see most of their activity on the final trading day, which is what people call them 0-day. But in SPX, which is where these things were first listed, we see 45 to 50% of the volume in the 0-day contracts. And in fact, I just sent the spreadsheet to Mark Sebastian and to you, Mark Longo, with the details on that. But market-wide, around 18% on average. This short-term contract trading is really the growth story for this year, right? For the last couple of years, it's been retail adoption. That's kind of leveled off and come in a little bit, although it's kind of picked back up since the market bounced. But the 0-day flow really is a success story. Typically 3 or 4 million contracts a day in SPY. Like I said, about 1.5 million in SPX. They also exist in some of the other popular products, QQQ and NASDAQ. XSP, which is our mini SPX, has 0 days as well. So it's huge. And, I've spent hours talking to people about who's trading these things. And, my best kind of understanding of it is that people really are treating them as kind of like separate instruments. They're not modeling them the same way as longer term options. They're using them for different purposes. We see people trading them for premium harvesting. We see people trading them because they just let you kind of put on a very short term position as efficiently as possible, right? Because you're not buying optionality beyond the end of today. So I think that's going to continue. I think that's going to be why we blow through 11 billion contracts easy this year. And there's rumors that we might see short-term contracts listed for some of the single stocks as well, which will continue to provide growth.
Yeah, that happens, and it's a no-brainer, 11 billion contracts easily. But intriguing stuff. Nonetheless, good question out there. Pena, keep those questions coming, listeners, because it's time for us to keep on rolling into our final segment and go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time for our final segment where we go around the block, let you know what we're keeping an eye on until our Monday episode. Let's start in the land that is blessedly free of apocalyptic smoke, known as St. Charles. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what are you keeping an eye on until our Monday episode?
I think the main thing that I'm watching tomorrow would be the 4,300 level. We made a couple of runs at it. Couldn't quite break it. Just seeing if the 4,300 can hold in the SPX. Checking that out.
You're not going to be watching for VIX 83? That's not part of your models right now?
I can't say the VIX 83 has been, it hasn't come up in any client meetings.
It's not on your radar for the next week?
No, it is not.
Hey, those calls look pretty good, though. If VIX does get to 83, that guy's going to be a happy camper. And the Rock Lobster...
He will be laughing at us.
The Rock Lobster will be sad because he's sitting on all those juicy VIX puts. But I digress. Yes. Speaking of the Rock Lobster, sir, I know you're watching VIX 83. What else are you keeping an eye on until our next episode on Monday, sir?
I was invoked. Just see if we get more of this participation from the other 44,990 stocks in the Wilshire 5000, which I think overall this has been very positive that other stocks are starting to rally a little bit. So, that's the biggest one as far as VIX. If the Fed's going to say they're going to pause for the year and make banks buy a bunch of treasury bills. And right now, nobody cares. I mean, if nobody cares, nobody cares. So now, while all that could change, right now it's, year lows in VIX is still year lows in VIX. So I'm going to keep going.
Keep on going. Pay no attention to the inflation man behind the curtain. Mr. Flowmaster, last but not least, sir, what are you keeping an eye on until your next appearance next week?
Well, I agree. The one thing that probably concerns me is this concentration in the super mega cap names that really did get us here. There was a pretty good podcast I listened to by Dean Kernot called Alpha Exchange, which I recommend for your listeners. Once they've listened to all 200 hours.
I was going to say, there are no other podcasts but ones on this network, so I'm not sure if you're aware of that. The iTunes charts end with us.
Gotcha. I mean, I will be watching, this volatility level, right? We all know volatility is mean reverting. Where the mean really is and how quickly we get there is a different story. It feels a little bit to me like we're at the low end of things. That doesn't mean that we're going to get a big bounce to it. But as you mentioned, it can only go so low, right? There's kind of a fundamental bottom to VIX, and we're not too far off of it. So I'll be keeping an eye on that, and things like this, this 100,000 lot positioning. Trying to watch that, and then there's lots of story stocks out there, so it's interesting, right? The macro picture, which dominated kind of the first quarter, people aren't talking about it as much. Whether or not they should be or not is a different story. But people are looking at some of these stocks. I mean, looking at Carvana, that blows my mind. I think I think the straddle was around 20%, so it's doubled that. But it used to be a $300 stock too, so. You never know. A lot of room there.
There is a lot of room indeed. Unfortunately, listeners, that music means no room left on the old program. But before we go, let's go back around the horn the way we just were. Let's start with the Flowmaster so he can put his respirator back on and get back to vying against the impending apocalypse there in NYC. Mr. Flowmaster, before we go, sir, if folks are intrigued, they want to check out what you and the rest of the team over there at the CBOE data side are up to, where should they go? What should they do?
Thanks, Mark. CBOE.com/RMA, which stands for Risk and Market Analytics. And you'll see all the services and data products that we have. And you can request a trial, and we will show you some of the magic.
Let them show you the magic. CBOE.com. Easy to find. You've probably been there before, listeners. Check it out. See what Flowmaster and the rest of the team are up to. Spoiler alert, it's pretty cool stuff. Even you can model what happens to your positions when VIX goes to 83. And Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, I know you're busy modeling that as well. When you're not busy modeling that, or maybe if folks have questions about what happens to their positions when VIX goes to 83, where should they go? What should they do?
You go to optionpit.com, 888-TRADE-01, ask for our customer care team. If you want to learn how to trade all these products, understand how they work, use them in your trading, you learn how to use them as a portfolio hedge the right way so you don't, get slapped upside the head. Come on over to optionpit.com. We'll be happy to help. And also, you can find me at Money Map Press, weekly option cycles. We're basically teaching people how to portfolio hedge every week and make money at the same time. I know it's crazy, but it's possible. All right, there you go.
And how do those positions perform when VIX goes to 83? That's the question everyone wants to know, sir. Inquiring minds. Inquiring
80
minds.
is not a problem.
80. Okay, good. Just wanted to clarify that. If you, too, want to aim for VIX 80 and above, listeners, optionpit.com is the place to go. And last but not least, he's not really aiming for VIX of 80. He's more looking for an S&P, maybe 4,500. His goals are much more modest. He is the unklest of Mikes. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, where should folks go if they want to share with you in those enjoyable, attainable goals?
For sure. Go to my website, stcharleswealth.com. You can follow me on Twitter as well, at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW.
There you go. Check him out at stcharleswealth.com. And, of course, Mike TOSAW on the old Twitter. He's always tweeting out fun stuff in between episodes of this show. That music means we are done with this program, but never fear, listeners. We'll be back in a little bit with This Week in Futures Options. Got a rare appearance on that program by the once and future Dr. VIX. He's been champing at the bit to come on to talk about, nat gas, vol, and all sorts of other fun stuff out there. So stay tuned for that coming up in a little bit. If you're listening live, just hang out. We'll be back in a little bit. If you're listening after the fact, just hit next on your podcast platform of choice. Chances are Twifo will be there waiting for you. Unfortunately, we won't be there waiting for you tomorrow for Volatility Views. I have some previous engagements I must attend to, listeners, but never fear. We won't leave you hanging. There'll be something waiting for you in your feed tomorrow. Maybe a quick Just the Facts, ma'am edition of Vol Views out there. So look forward to that. Back again on Monday, another episode of The Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by CBOE. When it comes to trading volatility, trust CBOE, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. CBOE's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.